I'll just do a little spiel if that's okay. Welcome everybody. Today we are kicking off the March Traffic Safety Spotlight, which is focusing on impaired driving and with a particular focus on mandatory alcohol screening. And I think you have all been supplied with a news release, and if you haven't, we'll give you one shortly. But our message today is that we want to make people aware of a right that police have under federal legislation. It's actually not new, it's dating back to 2018, but it's something that maybe drivers aren't as aware of as they should be. And it involves police having the right to demand a quick roadside breath test for alcohol to any driver they legally stop. And we're partnering with the Regina Police Service today, and we will I think drivers in Regina in particular may notice that if they are stopped by a member of the Regina Police Service traffic unit, at some point during the month of March, they're going to be doing some additional enhanced enforcement when it comes to impaired driving, and that includes any driver they legally stop could be asked to take one of these quick roadside breath tests. And our message to drivers from SGI is, as your friends, we want to encourage you to take that test, because under federal legislation, police do have the right to ask for that test. And if a driver refuses, they could be subject to the same penalties under the law as if they had been charged with impaired driving. So our advice is take the test. If you haven't been drinking, you have no reason to fear it. And as you'll see in the demonstration we're about to provide, it's a few seconds and then you'll be on your way. And with that, I'm so pleased to be joined by Sergeant Shannon Gordon of the Regina Police Service. And one of the things that, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but she is one of the people that is responsible for training police officers to conduct sobriety tests. Fair?
Yes.
Fair to say? Okay. And so she's going to talk a little bit about what the Regina Police Service is doing in particular. Now, I understand that, of course, our friends in the media here have provincial audiences, and so while the Regina Police Service is going to be doing this enhanced focus in March, of course, police across Saskatchewan are always on the lookout for impaired drivers. And if you are in another jurisdiction, you could expect to be asked to take one of these tests whenever you are stopped. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be doing it for everyone, but those police services will be making their own enforcement decisions. But we do want drivers, no matter where they're driving, to be aware of this piece of federal legislation that gives police the right to demand that quick roadside test. And so with that, Sergeant Gordon and I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
With the enhanced enforcement here in the city, is the police just looking at doing the breath test for this month alone, or is there kind of any extended program?
We're kicking it off for this month with the traffic safety unit, but it's not unlikely that it will continue on throughout the remainder of the year and moving forward into the next year.
I would like to know, is there a higher number of people that are that have been caught with impaired driving that led to this initiative?
I'm actually going to turn over to Tyler for that, since you know statistics.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but in general, what we can say is the trends that we've been seeing when it comes to impaired driving offenses that are reported by police provincially month in and month out is we have actually seen a slight decrease in the number of criminal code charges that have been reported by police. And but we have seen a more substantial increase in the number of administrative roadside suspensions that drivers are getting. So that's drivers are getting, it's an impaired driving offense that if you exceed provincial limits. So that means for an experienced driver, for example, 0.04 blood alcohol content. For a new driver, it's 0.0 alcohol content. There's zero tolerance for alcohol for new drivers. And for all drivers, there's zero tolerance for drugs. So if you were to test positive on one of the roadside oral fluid testers that can determine whether a driver has been using cannabis or other drugs, you may get a administrative suspension. So it's like a 3-day license suspension, a 3-day vehicle impoundment for an experienced driver, and you get 4 demerits, and you have to take a weekend class as well. So there's kind of those two classes of impaired driving offense. Criminal code charges have come down slightly. the administrative suspensions have come up substantially. And I would say that is driven largely by the increase in drug-related suspensions. And one of the reasons for that is not that necessarily more people are using drugs, but more people are getting caught because police have access to those roadside fluid testers. Now, to be clear, when we're talking about roadside, these mandatory roadside tests and police having the right to demand these tests of any driver they illegally stop, that's limited to alcohol because that test is very quick. It's a few seconds, whereas the roadside swab, it takes a few minutes longer, so police need reasonable suspicion that you've been using cannabis to demand that test. But they can demand a test of any driver they stop to take that roadside test for alcohol, whether you've got a burnt out headlight, or you weren't wearing your seatbelt, they caught you speeding or distracted driving, you might be asked to blow into that approved screening device for alcohol. Long-winded answer, and there you go. Make that into a clip.
Just to, I'm sorry, just to piggyback onto that, I would say, although we haven't seen an increase in the impaired driving charges, we are still seeing impaired driving charges. And as drivers, we have the responsibility to keep ourselves and everyone else on the road safe and to make good, safe decisions when we're driving. And so as long as we have impaired drivers on our roads, we continue to have a problem. And so this is just another tool that police have an option of using that helps keep everyone else on the roadway safe.
Is there a particular event or like a report or something that triggered this event for March specifically? Or is it just part of SGI's regular rotating spotlight?
Yeah, I would say it's that. I mean, we try and keep our impaired driving, well, I'll just peel back the curtain a little bit, right? We try and keep our impaired driving messaging fresh. We talk about impaired driving all the time, and we really appreciate the coverage from the Saskatchewan media, the ongoing coverage of this. And to be clear, still a very significant issue. As Sergeant Gordon indicated, we're still seeing impaired driving on our roads. We've seen substantial culture change in Saskatchewan when it comes to impaired driving. When you look at, compared to a decade ago, the number of collisions, injuries, and fatalities have decreased substantially. However, some people are still making the choice to get behind the wheel after drinking or using drugs. And every injury and every fatality that happens as a result of impaired driving is completely unnecessary, and it was completely preventable because nobody ever needs to drive impaired. So we're still focused on it because impaired driving remains the leading cause of death on Saskatchewan roads. So when we kind of plan out our year and think about the things that we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about impaired driving a fair bit. And so for March, we were going to talk about impaired driving. We started talking to the Regina Police Service, who told us that they were going to be doing this initiative to make the public more aware that police do have the right to demand that quick roadside breath test for alcohol. And we thought this was a natural fit and something that the public would be interested in.
So walk
Another
us,
long-winded answer. I'm going to shorten this up.
Okay, so walk this through us so we can understand. The police have to legally pull you over and then ask for a breathalyzer. You can't just pull a person over and ask them for a breathalyzer unless there's a headlight out or unless there's something wrong. So the primary is to pull a driver over for a reason, moving violation, speeding. Then the secondary is you can ask them to blow. Explain us exactly that sequence.
Absolutely. So that's a bit of a yes and no answer for you. So yes, police need to have a lawful reason to have stopped you as the driver of the vehicle. We can't just randomly pull people over. However, one of the lawful reasons for police to stop a vehicle is to check sobriety of the driver. So generally we're checking for sobriety of the driver, license and registration are valid for the driver and the vehicle, and that the vehicle itself is mechanically fit to be on the road. So although we can't just pull anyone over, checking sobriety is one of the reasons that we can pull someone over.
That sounds a lot to me like carding, where you're randomly pulling someone over because you are deciding without any visible or physical behavior that says they're drunk. Now, in the US, walking down the street as a black person is enough for the police to pull you over and card you. This sounds a lot to me like carding. That's one part of it. Now, the other thing, this sounds very unconstitutional, And I'm wondering, has anyone taken this to the Supreme Court of Canada? And if so, are you fearful that this will be fought and knocked down?
It has been challenged in Saskatchewan, and the Saskatchewan Court of Appeals has upheld the constitution of it. I believe there has been Supreme Court of Canada challenges. I don't know that there have been official decisions handed down from those yet, but the spirit in which the police were given the authority, Section 2 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is what you're referring to, which prevents unlawful search and seizure for citizens of Canada. But Section 1 of the Charter says that your individual rights do not supersede the safety of the community as a whole. So much like when we go to an airport and we're subjected to a search, much like when we go to many concerts, sporting events, we're subjected to a search. It's the same premise of as an individual using, as an individual on the roadway or going to a concert, going on an airplane, going to large public gatherings, we have a duty as an individual to ensure the safety of all those sharing in that event or within that privilege that we're being given. And so Parliament has said that by subjecting a driver to a very quick roadside test of their breath, which is essentially a search of their breath, it is for the greater good of all of those sharing the roadway, and that's why it's Section 1 of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms that is basically saying we have a right to ensure everyone's safety.
From the year 2000, from the year 2023, how many people were pulled over and how many people were convicted of drunk driving?
Well, we can get that information for you if you'd like. In terms of pulled over,
Secondary question.
Sorry, 1 second.
Are you? How many
sir,
people? How many?
I'm going to address your earlier question, and then we can carry on. That's fine.
Short.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay. 2 things. Driving is a privilege. It's not a right, and we're actually not here to debate the validity of the laws, because the provincial government, the Regina Police Service, didn't pass these laws. SGI didn't pass these laws. This is a federal government law, right? We look at ourselves as trying to provide information to people that will help keep them out of trouble, and keep them safe. Obviously, we're going to tell you never drive impaired. We also don't want people to run afoul of the law as it currently exists. So if somebody wants to challenge this law, they could, but I would prefer to not ever face the situation where I was arrested for refusing to take a test, even though I hadn't been drinking, but because I wanted to make a point. Now, this is a 5-second blow into a machine. As you'll see, it's a quick demonstration. Police have long had the ability to pull over any driver to check sobriety. Like, check stops are not a new thing. They didn't come in 2018. They've existed for many years. You were pulled over, you're asked a few questions, and this adds a scientific measurement of whether you have been consuming alcohol. So I hear what you're saying, and we understand that people will have opinions about whether or not this law should exist. We're not here to debate that. We're just trying to live in the world that we live in, and we want to keep people out of trouble and also keep them safe. And the best thing to do is never drive impaired. And if you haven't been consuming alcohol, you don't have to worry about what's going to happen if you take this test. Now, I'm sure Sergeant Gordon would speak more eloquently about this than me, about the practices that police use to determine who gets pulled over. I mean, you introduced some different elements to it, but I think there's an element of randomness on this.
My main concern is, if you are keeping records of how many people you pull over, then you must be keeping records of the people that are pulled over, how many of them are racialized. I would like to see how many racialized people are pulled over, because to me, and understanding my constitutional rights, this seems to me like carding. To me.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but SGI doesn't pull people over and doesn't keep those records. Police may. I can't speak for them. But again, a bit of friendly advice, if you're in this situation where you have been pulled over, no matter who you are or your background, I think it's, the best advice I could give you is comply with the request for the test, and if you haven't been drinking, you don't have anything to worry about. You'll be on your way in a matter of seconds. So
It
if
sounds
you
like
want
this
to.
law's never really been used in Saskatchewan on everybody before. This is something that SGI has directed.
It is not SGI directed,
Yeah.
no, it is, like, SGI has commented, this came into effect in 2018. And so up until, this point, it has been used, just not as widely used as, we are encouraging now. It was always used at every check stop. And we're still seeing impaired driving, charges, and we're still seeing, roadside suspensions as a result of drinking and driving. And so we're now using this tool that was given to us, 4 years shy of 10 years ago. We're now using this tool, that has been used in other provinces. And now we're saying, let's get our impaired driving, detection and, holding those drivers responsible. Let's make that a priority.
Has there been
How many
any
police
additional?
officers gonna be on the ground for the driver's operation?
Our traffic safety unit has 10 officers, so they will be the unit primarily conducting these stops, as they have the most regular interaction with members of the public and are the easiest to bring about the education of why we're doing this and the legal authority for which we're doing it. It is also open to every member of the police service, so it's hard to say exactly how many at a time, but primarily the traffic safety unit is the ones leading this.
How much is the cost for the operation?
How much is the cost for our operation?
Yeah, because if it's in the night and something, like, if there's more police officers, maybe there will be a cost for it.
There's no more extra manpower being devoted than what would already be on patrol for that particular time frame. So the only cost would be administrative costs as far as our equipment that we use, which is a standard cost that police services, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. It's a standard cost that police services budget for throughout the entire year.
If a driver refuse to blow, how much is the fine? And if someone caught drunk driving, sorry, how much is the cost for this offender?
So if someone is caught, and on the roadside screening device, we get what we call a warn, which means that they're above the administrative suspension limit of 0.04 milligrams percent, but they're below 80 milligrams percent, which is our criminal code cutoff. At that point, they could experience a roadside suspension, so their license would be suspended for a period of time, their vehicle would be taken for a period of time, so there would be cost associated with that. If they're charged criminally, so they're above 80 milligrams percent, then it's a criminal code charge, and they would go before a judge, and the judge would assign whatever they believe to be the appropriate fine, up to the limits that are defined within the criminal code.
Why is the RPS doing this? Is it because there is a law that allows you to do it, or there's a particular reason why, we're doing this now?
We are doing this now in partnership with SGI because this month is impaired driving focus. We're coming into summer, which also can result in higher impaired driving as summer approaches and more activities start happening outside of the home where it's a little bit nicer and we want to be outdoors. So we're just encouraging people to start understanding that police do have this legal authority to demand a quick sample of the breath, and to start making some good decisions leading into summer, so we all have a safe summer ahead.
I need
It
some.
has to be applied equally. You can't just give it to one person and not the next. In order to do it, everybody going through check stuff has to be.
Correct, yes, the whole.
And this hasn't been done before, is there?
It's not a check
Check
stop.
stop.
This isn't a check stop. Yeah, this isn't a check stop, this is, just traffic stops that are happening, enforcement-wise throughout the city. Check stops, it's always been done at. This is now, moving in line with what other provinces are doing, other jurisdictions are doing, and, is starting to use this tool at all at all traffic stops in order to encourage people to make those safe decisions and to keep the road safe.
And everyone has to receive the breathalyzer in order to be able.
It's a roadside screening, not the breathalyzer. So breathalyzer would be, like the intoxilizer, so that would be done under reasonable probable grounds under arrest. This is done roadside, and it is, the whole premise behind mandatory is that it is for everyone. It can and will be applied to every stop.
So what additional talks or training has been going on in the traffic division in preparation of this event? I think I've already heard there's not gonna be additional check stops. Is this just going to be on top of, say, if you were just pulled over for speeding, you can also expect to also just have to do the breath test now?
Yes, absolutely. So any lawful reason that we have a driver pulled over, they can expect to be demanded to provide a sample of their breath in order to check their sobriety. And I'm sorry, there was a second part to your question and I forgot.
It more ties back to that one. So
The
as a
education.
driver, like, would I reasonably expect I could just be pulled over and then the cop just come over and say, blow into this
Yes,
immediately?
yes.
For
So-
no other
How
reason
can that
other
be?
than-
That's unconstitutional. You
Sir?
just randomly say, I'm gonna pull that guy over. He hasn't done a moving violation or was weaving. You're just gonna pull him over. That sounds like carding.
Right, and as I said, we have a responsibility, and one of the reasons that we can pull vehicles over is for sobriety of vehicle, or of the driver. And so it could be, an offense under a vehicle equipment regulation that we pull you over for. It could be, a speeding offense, it could be an offense on, any offense under the Traffic Safety Act. It could be something as simple as a slight deviation from a lane, and we want to pull that vehicle over to ensure that that driver is safe to be operating. And whether it was just a momentary lapse in concentration, or was there something else contributing to, the driving that we saw.
But like reasonably here, citizens of Saskatchewan can expect, or citizens of Regina can expect, you have to do something before you get pulled over. It's not just gonna be, cop sees you, pulls you over, blow into this, for no other reason other than, I'm bored, strictly I want you to blow into this, maybe.
This is true. The chances of you being pulled over solely for the reason of checking sobriety is very slim. There's usually an accompanying infraction that has happened that has caused that traffic stop. We're not commonly pulling people over just to check sobriety. That's what check stops are for. In real world policing, very high likelihood that there has been some other infraction that has led us to the interaction.
And from the training side, what would you be looking for signs of intoxication if that was the only reason you were gonna pull someone over?
So signs of intoxication can vary
Do you
greatly.
mean for driving behaviors too, or do you mean like when they?
Like
actually-
while driving,
Yeah.
or what you would get pulled over for, say if a cop was following you for like 30 seconds, what they would see that might cue them to pull you over.
Yeah, so if we're talking the signs and symptoms of impaired driving, there's all sorts of studies out that have kind of combined police agencies across the country to say what are some of the commonalities among driving population, and they can be things such as deviation from a lane, unable to maintain lane. It can be unable to maintain speed. It can be instances of impaired distance, time and distance perception. So they stop above or in the crosswalk or past the crosswalk, or they stop 2 car lengths behind the crosswalk. It could be, like I said, not driving with your lights on. Anything that requires multiple facets of attention when we drive. Sometimes, oftentimes when we consume alcohol or drugs, we're unable to concentrate on all the little tasks that we need to do when we drive. So things like, not turning windshield wipers off when it's no longer raining. because they've forgotten, they're too busy paying attention to just maintaining a lane on the road, that they're not paying attention to all the other things going on. So it could be a variety of different behaviors, and those behaviors in and of themselves don't constitute necessarily impairment. It constitutes, it leads to the vehicle stop, and then the subsequent investigation, because sometimes it's a pothole on our streets that causes us to deviate lanes.
Do you think with all of these traffic stops, you could potentially lose some of the trust of the public with this?
What we're hoping is, we've printed up some information cards that can help explain to the public, and we're hoping that they see it as us working harder to keep them safe on the road. If they're not drinking and driving, they have nothing to fear from this sample, and my hope is that they look at that and they think, like I said, we're out there working extra hard to get those drivers off the road so that their loved ones are not killed or injured from impaired drivers.
Does there have to be some infraction, or can you just say, I wanna find out if this person has a driver's license or other than just curious?
That could be, absolutely. One of the reasons that we pull people over is to check for valid license and registration, so that could very well be, why we stop. But again, that's one of those similar to checking sobriety. It's unlikely that you're going to be stopped for that reason. It's generally going to be a stop for some other infraction under an act or a bylaw.
Is this just the blitz of the month, or is this permanent now?
I'm hoping, and what I'm anticipating is that it will continue. And we're doing this campaign now to, like I said, get public engaged and understanding and researching and asking questions and having conversations about impaired driving. And then moving forward, it's likely to continue.
You said this is in cooperation with SGI. What role does SGI play in police decisions and what you do and policies and things like that? Do they sort of say, hey, you gotta do more breathalyzers?
Absolutely not. SGI is a partner with Regina Police Service as a off-branch unrelated to police that help to hold drivers accountable. They're the insuring partner of all of our driver's license, all of our vehicles. And so when there is a vehicle infraction that happens, whether that's criminal or provincial legislation, SGI comes in as a partner because they're the insurer for all of us.
And this is just for traffic, not the regular officer, patrol officers?
It could be any of them. They all have the option, but it is our traffic safety unit that is primarily going to be doing.
Do you mind if I just address Wayne's
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and then we'll get, because you asked about
I know.
us.
Could
Yeah,
miss the
yeah,
opportunity.
just to be clear, we're not telling, we're not telling police how to do their jobs, and we're not telling them what to enforce, but we all have a shared interest in improving safety on our roads. You asked what's SGI's role in this? News conferences, media releases. We're also providing a bit of funding for sober drivers that pass one of these tests will be given I believe a Tim Hortons gift card. So we're going to buy them a coffee and thank them for cooperating. SGI's role in that sense is, helping raise awareness of this. Again, just want to make it clear, SGI did not pass this law. The provincial government did not pass this law. The federal government did. But SGI doesn't want anybody to get in trouble. And we'd like drivers to do things that keeps them safe. So making those good choices, not driving impaired. And I think I rambled. You've been waiting very patiently.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, do you think that there will be, what happens to innocent drivers that are pulled over and they don't know their rights and they request a lawyer? And so what happens to those people?
Yes, so at that point, there is no right to a lawyer. However, if the driver refuses, they would be warned with refusal and what the consequences of that are. At which point, their right to a lawyer would kick in because now we've entered into a criminal investigation and they're facing a refusal charge. And so at that point, the officer could give them that right to contact a lawyer. The problem with that is we can't afford the privacy roadside for that call to a lawyer. So then that person would be transported down to the office where they could be afforded the proper privacy to have that consultation with their lawyer. So initially, there is no right to a lawyer, because there's no arrest at that point. But should we start venturing down that road, there is absolutely a roadside educational aspect that happens with our officers, where we talk to that driver and we explain to them, it's not just you refuse, get out, put on the handcuffs and away you go and you're being charged. It doesn't work that way. We encourage them to understand why we're asking and what those consequences are, so they can make an informed decision.
But if you go to the police station, are you automatically then charged to make the call? Would you then automatically face a refusal charge, or could you talk to the lawyer first and then decide whether it's a refusal or not?
For this purpose, that breath sample has to be provided roadside immediately. So if we have to go down to the police station, then we're probably gonna start looking towards other avenues of investigation, because now that sample hasn't been taken within an appropriate amount of time. So at that point, what would probably end up happening is the officers may move towards a suspicion-based demand and formulate those grounds at that point. But really, at the very basis of it is, if you're not drinking, then you really have nothing to fear from this. It's not a hard test. It's not something that's gonna leave you breathless. It's not something that's gonna hurt. It's a quick sample and it's over and done, and if it's negative, you're on your way, and it has all taken less than 5 minutes of your time.
So if you refuse the screening at the roadside, you would get most likely a charge of refusal.
How much is the fine?
For the refusal?
Yeah.
The refusal charge carries the same penalty under the criminal code as if you had blown on the instrument, the breathalyzer or the intoxilizer. It carries the same fine as if you had failed that.
And you lose
before-
your license, right, for a year, or so?
You have the potential to lose your license, yes.
If that person is innocent, if the driver is innocent and you refuse to blow,
That would be up to the courts to decide. Yeah.
and before announcing these new measures, have you consulted some organizations and marginalized communities to know what they think about it?
No, we haven't, because it is a law that affects every member of the city, the province, the country. So it's a law that is enforceable towards everyone, and it is being used in that spirit towards everyone, no one specific.
Okay, and why it wasn't applied before?
It wasn't applied before because it was still applied before because officers were using it. They weren't using it as readily as we're asking them to use it now. They were using it in the situation where they maybe pulled somebody over and had no suspicion and wanted to use the tool, and now we're saying, let's use the tool in which let's use the tool in the spirit in which it was intended, that it's mandatory across the board. There is no, you walk up and make a decision in that moment. It's a decision, period.
Okay, I'm asking you these questions because I'm new in Regina.
No,
I came from
absolutely.
Montreal, Quebec, so
Yes.
I'm trying to understand why it wasn't applied before.
Yes, yeah, we're just asking it to be applied more so.
Perfect.
Please say your name, the designation, and please spell it because we've forgotten that in the mix.
Okay. Sergeant Shannon Gordon, Gordon, and I am the sergeant in charge of the traffic safety unit here from Regina.
Your first and last name, did you spell it too?
Oh, sorry, first name is Shannon, and Gordon, Gordon.
Awesome. So is it safe to assume that Regina Police came forward with this to SGI? It was
Yes.
your kind of idea?
Yes.
Okay, have you ever heard anything have you talked about this with Saskatoon Police or any other police services? Do you know if any of them are gonna maybe try this out too?
They very well could. I know there is a lot of talk within the province among multiple policing agencies that this is a tool available. I won't speak for them on whether they're choosing to use it in the same spirit in which we are. But I know there are some that are in talks and considering.
And just so, I just want to, matter of technicality, because we've thrown around the names of a couple of devices.
Yes.
The intoxicalizer, right?
Intoxilizer.
Intoxilizer, and breath, also more commonly known as a breathalyzer. That's what happens when you go back to the station, gives you that exact reading, the 0.08. Whereas the device that you guys are about to see a demonstration of is more commonly referred to as an approved screening device, and it's a much quicker test, and it just provides a pass, warn, or fail. Okay, so sometimes people conflate the two or mix up the two, so I just want to make sure that for your purposes, when you're writing your stories, and we're talking about an approved screening device or for mandatory roadside testing, a breathalyzer or intoxilizer is different, and which can more formulate the evidence for a criminal charge, whereas the handheld device that you're about to see, even a fail on that cannot by itself substantiate a criminal charge. You would need further proof, right? Okay.
So
Good, I've been
just-
saying that for a while, so I was hoping I was right.
So just to confirm, even if you were pulled over for no other reason other than just to blow, a failure on that test does not necessarily mean you're even charged. You do get the option of, you have to go back and do the official test.
Yes, the official test confirms an actual reading. It gives us an actual percentage blood alcohol on that intoxilizer, breathalyzer. That's where we get the actual reading. This device is not as sensitive as that one, so it's gonna give us an indication, at which point we're gonna enter into the larger investigation.
So for the warning then, what do you do, like what, are there any steps after a warning?
Yes, so a warning would tell us that the driver is between 0.04, which is our provincial administrative suspension level, and 0.08. So they're not criminally over the legal limit, but provincially, we know that is still enough alcohol to have some effect on your decision-making and making it unsafe for you to drive. So at that point, you would be issued a provincial suspension.
And so that's not a criminal charge, but
Right.
it's 3 days, a 3-day license suspension for an experienced driver for your first offense. It escalates if you have repeat offenses. And in addition to that, you lose your vehicle at roadside for 3 days. There is a requirement for a weekend driving without impairment course, and there is 4 demerits on your safe driver recognition. So there are consequences that even go, so when the meeting, this is just a thing for me, and we actually put out a news release about this last year, about the real legal limit. It's not 0.8. For an experienced driver, it's 0.4. For a new driver, it's 0, because there's 0 tolerance for any alcohol whatsoever. And of course, for all of us, 0 tolerance for drugs. So I think we're all clear on that.
One last question, at what points does it become criminal?
For a roadside screening device for alcohol, it becomes criminal when we get a fail on that roadside screening device. And then at that point, it becomes a criminal investigation. You would be arrested, your rights to counsel would be given, you would have an opportunity to speak to a lawyer, and then you would come down and provide a sample on the far more sensitive instrument that would give us then an actual blood alcohol concentration reading.
This is just alcohol, not marijuana? It's not
Yes, this is
mandatory?
just alcohol.
Why not both?
There was no mandatory drug screening allowed to us by Parliament. There was no mandatory demand for that, primarily because that's a longer roadside test. And the alcohol one is very, very quick, very innovasive, and just a quick breath sample. So we were only given the mandatory alcohol screening for alcohol, not drugs, mostly because the drug is a longer test roadside, and we didn't want to inconvenience drivers longer than necessary without suspicion.
Right. And in a scenario where someone felt they were being pulled over unfairly, being carded, what's the best course of action? Take the roadside test and then maybe contact the lawyer and challenge it? Or if it goes back to the police station, it's gonna be followed up by paperwork anyway? Can you just explain that?
Yes, absolutely. If you have been pulled over and you feel that you have been treated unfairly by police, there are a variety of remedies for that. And I would encourage anyone who feels that they're in that situation to seek legal counsel, and they can explain those remedies and those avenues to you, and you can find the one that best suits how you wanna proceed.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for all the great questions, guys. We're gonna move outside for that demonstration. Grab